Welcome to a Dragonlance Hangout. It is Krynn Frost Cult, the 31st, New Year's Eve. That's right. My name is Adam. Today I'm discussing the forthcoming DLSaga Anthology and my process of writing. I would like to take a moment and thank the DLSaga YouTube members and Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron by visiting the link in the description below. You can even pick up Dragonlance media using my affiliate links. Now, this is really just Dragonlance Hangouts are just me riffing and having fun with you guys, assuming anyone shows up, and you never know. No one might, and that's okay too, because I do have things to talk about. However, I wanted to talk about, because I'm going to be doing a video and releasing the video specifically about it as well, I wanted to be a little bit more loose and relaxed about talking about the anthology, covering some of the basics that I've heard already of people's concerns and addressing those concerns. And then, of course, inviting you to submit your stories and such. Sith the Brick, thanks for tuning in. So far, the new year hasn't happened for me yet. But I anticipate it being just as chaotic and insane as this past year has been. Corey, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, we already have people lighting off fireworks and stuff. I'm one of those people. I'm a veteran. I'm a dog owner, and I don't think we should be using fireworks anymore. I just really don't, especially on New Year's or anytime really, especially like 4th of July. But I'm in Utah, and so we have what's called Pioneers Day, which is basically the day that pioneers settled the Salt Lake Valley. That's sort of the genesis of it. But it's treated as like July 4th times 2. You know, it's like the second July 4th for Utah. And so there's mass fireworks on and around July 4th, mass fireworks on and around July 24th, and then mass fireworks on or around New Year's. And if you've ever met a veteran who's ever had PTSD, it's a huge deal. I mean, it's like going right back into battle, hearing the constant explosions, and it can be a massive trigger for some people. And then, of course, a lot of animals don't know what the hell is going on, and it freaks them out. You know, like these massive chain sounds booming that they can't comprehend. And it creates undue anxiety and undue stress. And I just think there's no real reason to have it. I mean, I don't know. I know I'm the person dying on a hill here because everyone loves fireworks, but I just don't see the point, honestly. Happy New Year, Timothy. Thanks for tuning in. You got an Audible with your Dragonlance books. Yeah, I've actually done that a lot too. When I'm commuting back and forth to work, I find, as long as it's not an anthology, I find that's the best way, if I don't have a chance to sit down and read, to then consume Dragonlance novels myself. And arguably any novels. But yeah, you did 5 deployments. Thank you for your service, man. And yeah, I mean, not everyone digs, the vast majority of people love fireworks. And so what are you going to do? But I don't know. We have laws about how early before and after a holiday you're allowed to use fireworks. And so it's not just a day. It's like a week and a half around each of these holidays where it's just like constant pop, 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 freaking animals out and stuff. So not a big fan. Anyway, let's talk about stories and writing. So I'm going to be talking about the Dragonlance anthology itself. I'm going to be talking about some writing tips. If you've ever considered writing a short story, or maybe you are writing a short story, I'm going to put down some tips that I find useful, and hopefully they might benefit you as well. I've got a couple story ideas I could just throw out there, and maybe those will spur your imagination and encourage you to write a short story if you haven't yet. And then, of course, I was going to go over what I have from my short story thus far. I'm not going to be reading the short story or anything like that, but it's really just, I'm going to give you the log line. I'm going to tell you the time it's set in. I'm going to give you the basic background information about it. And I'm going to give you the 3-act structure for it without giving away anything specific, overly specific about it. Because I do want it to be, I want people to feel like it's something new and fresh that they've read, even though they may be very intimately familiar with the time it's taking place, you know? And so I'm trying to tell a story that is evocative and draws out emotion and interest, as all writing should do, I think, or at least aspire to do. All right, so let's start from the beginning. The genesis of this entire process was, of course, you all know him. Chris Androu made a comment on one of the reviews about, if this is the last anthology that we have in Dragonlance that I was reviewing, we should do a fan Dragonlance anthology. And the concept of that is great, except you can't use the word Dragonlance because it's trademarked by Wizards of the Coast. Understandably so, it's their IP. We cannot use the word and logo Dragonlance. However, actually, they don't have the logo trademarked. They just have the uppercase words Dragonlance trademarked. That's it. There's no actual graphic associated with that. So, that being said, in most every format of the presentation of my YouTube channel, when I started doing it years ago, I decided to move away from Dragonlance Saga to DLSaga, because if there ever did come a time when I wanted to do merchandise, which I have some of, like, if I ever did want to do merchandise or books or game supplements, then if I'm using DLSaga, I don't have to adhere to what Wizards of the Coast says or does. And I can just bypass them entirely. And just do DLSaga worlds using every single bit of the Dragonlance IP except for the name Dragonlance in all uppercase, because that's all they have copyrighted. And it's not me trying to take over their IP or do anything like that. It's just me trying to celebrate the Dragonlance world without stepping on their IP. And because they're not doing anything with it except for putting out a couple books every once in a while, I figure us fans should move it into the future. And we already have Dragonlance Nexus going through and releasing things through their DM's Guild, which is the Wizards of the Coast approved process of releasing stuff. But then they don't operate under DL Nexus. They operate under Dragonlance Nexus. And so because they're releasing adventures that are specifically for the IP branded Dragonlance, they want to, use that for their own reasons. And, hats off to them because they do a great job and they're putting out a lot of really great materials. I, however, do not want to be limited to 5th edition and releasing anything with the Dragonlance logo or name. I want to release it under DLSaga so that us fans, we're tipping our cap, so you know where we're talking about. You know what is coming, but it's not going to be stepping on their copyright. That's really what it comes down to. All right, so all that being said, the idea of an anthology is that you have 10, 12, 15 authors, depending on how many submit and how many are good. That's how many I'm going to be releasing in this one, first anthology. And if it goes well, then I'll do more anthologies. But really, we have to see if there's any legs and if we can actually get enough short stories to create an anthology. And right now, I do not have enough short stories. So, because I'm only doing one, and I know of a couple other people who are, well, I should say a few other people who are writing to submit. One has already submitted. So I have a short handful, enough for like a novella size release, but I really want to keep it, 350, 400, 450 pages in total. So I really want to have a lot of fans contributing to this. And again, we're not rewriting history. We're trying to maintain some semblance of canon, and we're trying to maintain these stories within specific, everyone's short story is going to be different, whatever you want to write about in whatever age you want to write about. And you can use existing characters because the characters and the world is not copyrighted. It's really just the word Dragonlance in all caps. That being said, your stories should be original. Like, they have to be original. That doesn't mean that you can't include existing characters or anything like that. That's fine. But the whole idea is to have an original story set in Dragonlance, because that's the strength of Dragonlance, is that you can have a whole lot of really great short stories in this wonderful world, and all of them are happening simultaneously when the heroes of the Lance are doing their thing, or when the Third Dragon War with Huma Dragonbane and Magius are doing their thing, and you can interject characters in these massive events around the world, or in between these events, and just tell an original story with no framework at all. And, if it's just a generic fantasy story that happens to work with this campaign setting, that's fine too. A really great example of this would be Margaret Weiss's, one of my favorite short stories of hers, is about someone who hires a bunch of dragon hunters to go into the dragon's lair and basically get all their treasure back that the dragon had stolen. And there's a nice little twist at the end. Now that could be set literally in any time in any fantasy campaign setting. And so because it's so generic, that it just works regardless of what campaign world it is. And that's very much how you could do your short stories. Just do your own thing. Have some fun with it. It doesn't have to be overtly set in this campaign world at all. As long as it's inspired and high fantasy, so that it could reasonably fit in, given those circumstances. Goldmoon, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Austin Bond, how you doing? Appreciate you subscribing. I really do appreciate that. I have a lot of content. I hope you enjoy it. Going to be running Dragonlance in OSE. Oh, that's cool. Old School Essentials, right? I've never played that, but I've heard so much about it. I just like AD&D, and so I hear it's somewhat similar to that, so I'm hoping to give it a go someday. Hopefully someday soon, to be quite honest. Ryan, thanks for tuning in. Happy New Year to you. All right, so the short story should stay around 4,000 to 7,500 words. If it goes over or if it goes under, that's fine. As long as the story is good, that's really what I'm concerned with. What I don't want to put out is a bunch of schlock that's just shitty or AI generated or garbage. I want original works from all of us who are, like you, very creative individuals who love high fantasy and just want to tell a fun and compelling fantasy story. And so that's really what I'm looking for. So stories have to be unpublished already, and they have to be original short stories. No AI. There are telltale signs that I know of when I see AI content, and so I'm going to go out of my way to make sure. So the whole concept behind this is that DLSaga is going to acquire first publication rights. As soon as the book is released, the rights revert right back to you at that moment, and you can republish it anywhere else you want. You can do whatever else you want to do with it. But first publishing, it has to be original, and I have to have first publishing rights to the story. And that's just so this isn't a publication full of existing stories that you could just read anywhere. This is supposed to be the very first DLSaga fan-led anthology, and I want it to be exciting and fun for all of us who love this. Authors are going to receive full author credit. They're going to have a short bio at the very beginning of the anthology talking about them. There'll be a little QR code if you want to have a specific website or social media profile or something like that, like a link tree or something like that. It can link to that very easily. So that'll be really convenient. And you'll get a complimentary copy of the print and digital. If you only want one of those two, that's fine as well, but you will get both. And what I'm going to be doing, because I've done this in the past with self-publishing and with professional authors' works, is formatting it for full printing and have it released so it can be picked up by anyone. And then it's going to have an ebook version and a PDF version. And those two are very different things. PDF, you can open and look on pretty much any browser nowadays and any program, basically. Ebook, however, you can adjust the font size, and so it reflows the entire book based on your specific preferences. I'm also going to be commissioning original artwork, and my goal, I haven't reached out or talked to anything yet, is to go to one of the existing Dragonlance book cover artists and having them I'm going to commission them to do the original book cover art. And then I'm going to have individual story illustrations before each short story, like we did with the original Chronicles, for example. Each new chapter had its own little wonderful piece of artwork. I don't know if I'll be doing those myself. I'm an artist, by the way, or if I'm going to, ask someone else to help contribute to that. But right now, that is my plan. So the illustration will be based on a scene in the actual story, hopefully the inciting incident, moment of this short story, if there is one. And so it'll just be, it should look like a truly professional anthology that is inspired by the great anthologies we've had released by TSR and Wizards of the Coast, but it's all fan-led and it's all fan-created. So that is really where I'm looking for. And so this is going to be a piece where you can keep it on your shelf next to your Dragonlance novels and feel confident that it looks in place and that it feels genuine and authentic to that world. Although it's not Dragonlance, it's DLSaga. So submissions are open right now. I know it takes a little while to write short stories, and so I'm going to be waiting until March 1st to send out contracts for that first publishing right to submitted short stories that are approved. If you do not get it in by March 1st, the reality is I may not be able to do this then. I may have to wait until maybe next year, 2027 or something, because if I don't have stories, then I can't publish the anthology. That's just the reality of it. So I'm hoping that enough of you are interested that you want to contribute and be a part of this wonderful event. If not, I understand, but hopefully we have enough to really put out something special. If an image is created for a short story, would you accept them as well? Yeah, of course. Yeah, if you wanted to submit an original image, for example, the downside to that, and I want to be clear about this up front, is that I want it all to look uniform, right? I'm an art director. I'm a graphic designer by trade. So I need to make sure that every single chapter, all the copy in it, it all looks like it belongs in one anthology. So I'm going to be doing line art for all of it. It's all going to be black and white. So if you submit an original piece in color or with a whole bunch of shading and stuff, know that, and I'll send it back to you for approval, but know that I'm going to be going over it and making line art out of whatever is submitted so that it does look uniform from story to story to story, that they all share the same visual aesthetic and connection. That's the point, is that this feels like a unified piece to be released, So just keep that in mind. But of course, if you have a specific imagery that you want to put together for it, then I will definitely, with your approval, recreate a line art version of that. Okay. So March 1st, 2026, of course, is the deadline for short stories. So if you haven't started writing one, start cogitating and start thinking about it. I am not an editor. I am not at all, but I will give it a go for you. I've read enough of these damn stories, you all know, because you've seen all the reviews, that I'm pretty good at piecing together stuff. And, professionally, I've had to write professionally for stuff, writing essays and website content and short stories of my own for my own reasons. And, of course, every episode of every show that I write. So, that's all, I have to research it and then write it all out and everything. So, I am capable. It's just not something that I do professionally. And so it could take me a little bit of time. So once I have all the short stories submitted by March 1st, my plan is to, at that point, I know for a fact that I have enough to create a book. That's when I'm going to commission the art. I don't want to drop thousands of dollars on art if I don't have enough to publish it. And so then we're going to have to wait for the commissioned art to come back. Submitters will be able to see the entire process of, the art from concept to completion, so they know exactly what's going to be coming. And then all of their little illustrations for their short stories are all going to be approved by them. And so they'll see all of that as well. And then ultimately, the final proof of the book is going to be sent to all of them, not for approval, but for review, so that you see what's going to be released. I am having all final approval rights on my shoulders, no one else, because I'm going to be funding this whole thing. So whether, once you sign the contract and get it back to me, your short story is locked in. I will not change anything to it at that point. But know that like the final approval on artwork and stuff, that's pretty much all going to be on me too. I'll send it back to you for any reasonable revisions that you might want to see, but I'm not going to go weeks and weeks going back and forth with you guys over illustrations that you're not even involved in, So I'm going to get it all out there. That's exactly right. So the brick perusal, not approval. All right. That all being said, it might be able to be released by December, for the holiday season in 2026. If everything goes according to plan, maybe even before then. But again, it's all hinging on whether or not I have enough submissions. Okay, that all being said. It's Gable. Thanks for tuning in. Happy New Year to you. Did I miss anyone yet? No, I don't think so. Mayonnaisium, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so I got some writing tips. This is stuff that I found interesting and just seemed to help out a little bit. And I thought maybe I'd share them. If you're considering writing a short story, or if you're starting already to have written your short story, maybe consider some of this. First and foremost, start small. Short is a feature. It's not a limitation. So focus on one main character, one core problem or moment, one change by the end. And if you can just keep it small and contained, that actually lifts a lot of the burden of writing a story off of your shoulders, because you already have those little story beats mapped out. And that all goes to say, don't just, whatever your writing style, or method is fine. But just what I like to do is to map out a 3-act structure, as if I was going to be building a session for a Dungeons and Dragons game, or if I was going to be writing a module or something like that. I just have 3 acts, what I want to have happen during this story. And, it's usually like introduction, conflict, resolution, and keeping it very simple and broken down like that. And then you can start to add nuance once you've already gotten into the original core of it. So understand, if you can summarize your story in one sentence, a log line, then you're on the right track. So a log line is basically like an elevator pitch for a movie or for a story. It's just, if someone says, hey, what's it about? Deliver one sentence, and that's what it's about. I'm going to give you my log line here in a minute. The second tip would be, give your character a want. Every scene should revolve around what the character wants right now. So every short story has to do with someone wanting something. And that's the genesis of conflict. That's the genesis of going on an adventure. That's just the beginning of a story. So what is it that the character wants? And of course, all these I'm going to, as I get to the end of this, I'm going to share how all these are connected in the story that I'm going to be telling. So every scene resolves around what the character wants right now. Do they want to escape something? Do they want to prove themselves? Do they want to protect someone? Do they want to uncover the truth of something? Conflict comes from something standing in the way of something like that. So understanding what your character wants is incredibly important. You need to, and the next tip, you need to show change, not just events. By the end of the story, something should be different. The character has learned something, perhaps. The world has changed in some way, perhaps. Or a belief is broken or reinforced. Even quiet stories need some sort of emotional shift. So all of that is to say that we need to, one, the character needs to want something, and then something has to change throughout the course of them trying to protect that or achieve it or whatever. The next little thing I have here is let the setting do story work. Now, we all know the setting, so that should not be difficult. You pick the era, you pick the location, you pick the characters, you pick everything. But you already have a great backdrop to start from, because we're not doing Dragonlance, we're doing DLSaga, but it's set in Krynn, it's set in that world, and everything like that. So your setting should actively affect the plot. Magic behaves differently in some cases. A city is built on forbidden ground, or the forest remembers those who enter. Just whatever your story is, reflect on the setting, the campaign setting that you're writing the story in, and that's going to give you a whole lot of heavy lifting already done. So if the story could happen anywhere, the setting isn't pulling its weight. Ramen, nice name. Thanks for tuning in. So for Christmas, Xmas for yourself, you got all the 3 hardcover Dragonlance Chronicles. You have been wanting them for a long time. Oh, that's great. Congratulations. That's awesome. All right, so the next tip I have for you is use specific details. And if you guys have any tips, please throw them in the YouTube chat. I would love to see or read what you guys have as suggestions for how to effectively write a good short story. Use specific details. Strong stories come from concrete details, not vague descriptions. For example, a chipped blue mug, rather than just saying a cup. The smell of wet leather, instead of saying a bad smell. Think in terms of our 5 senses and lean on that. Now, you don't have to do this on the first draft. The first draft is really just to get the story out there on paper. When you come back for the second and third and fourth draft, if it takes that much, then by all means, that's when you can add in those really juicy details and be really descriptive in the descriptions, because that's when you're going to have time to really cogitate on everything in the story. But initially, you just want to get it out there or on the page. 1 or 2 sharp details per scene is really enough. You don't have to go Nathaniel Hawthorne or I'm trying to think, for some reason the name is eluding me, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Oh my gosh, why is it not? Anyway, don't over-describe. It is very easy to over-describe. 1 or 2 really specific details in a scene is all you need to do. Let's see. You hope many of us are going to create a story. Yours is all prepared. You're working on it. Oh, I hope so too. I look forward to reading it, by the way. Hey, Skull Cowboy. Happy New Year to you. Thanks for tuning in. Okay. End with meaning, not necessarily fireworks. Fantasy endings don't need giant battles. Story endings often include some form of a sacrifice, a quiet victory, a revealed truth, a cost paid. Like the endings of stories doesn't have to be the end of a War of a Lance, for example. It can just be they're left standing in a field and all of their squad members are gone. I mean, just they're all dead or something. Or maybe they're left without their home and they're left forced to wander the forest or something. Like it can be something small, as long as that something small has impact to the character that is featured in the story. The ultimate best endings feel inevitable in hindsight. So after you're finished reading the story, it could have gone no other way. Like you're just like, yeah, of course that would have been the ending, and it fits perfectly. So one of my favorite Dragonlance short stories is Caraman helping a veteran, with his phantom pain in his arm. And the ending of that is the soldier being able to unclench his missing arm. And that's the end of the story. And it is so powerful. It has no grand impact. It only impacts one character, but it is so powerful in the story that it's become my favorite story of all Dragonlance and short stories. It's just, it's so impactful and meaningful and emotionally resonant. Now, we don't swing for the fences if you don't have it in you, but just tell a good story. That's really what it comes down to. All right, the next tip I have here, don't aim for perfection, aim for finished. All right, this is really important because you could noodle at a story your entire life and never feel like it's finished or like it's perfect. But it doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing is perfect. None of us are perfect. We are imperfect creatures going about, and this is something I learned because I'm an artist, because I'm I'm paid for doing what I do. graphic design and art direction, there is a point where you have to say, this is good enough. And it sucks and it hurts, especially when it goes out there in the real world and you see it and you're like, it's just not great. It could have been great if I had more time. But there's always a deadline. There's always a point where a client says, no, this is good. I want this to go. Or we have to get this to press tonight. So just do what you have to do to get it as finished as possible tonight. There's always stuff like that. So March 1st is the deadline. Don't noodle on it after March 1st. Get it submitted March 1st. And that's finished. That's good enough. Your first draft is allowed to be messy and nonsensical and filled with typos and grammar issues. That's okay. Just type it out, get it all out there. Finishing stories teaches you more about endless polishing, more than endlessly polishing the opening paragraph. Just get the story down and then refine it after it's down. Remember, you already have a set parameter, 4,000 characters to 7,500 characters. If it's a little under or over, that's okay, but you have a set parameter. So just write the story and then find out where you are with, word-wise, and then refine it and edit it after that. If you had to embellish sections, if you have to cut sections, but just go through. And then once you've done that, then look at it and think about those details. And once you've done that, then think, okay, does everything in this make logical sense? Is there a reason why characters are doing what they're doing? Have I explained why they're doing what they're doing? Why it's important to them to do what they're doing? And just go through it and make sure it makes logical sense. And then go through and do spelling and grammar and stuff. And then have someone else read it and give them feedback, get feedback from them and have them, for spelling and grammar errors and logic errors. Making sure you do all that, it doesn't have to take a long time. A short story can be read in an hour. It's just something you just sit down and just digest it and then think about it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then give feedback on it. So it really doesn't have to take a long time. I know people tend to overanalyze and overthink, and that comes with being a creative individual. But again, don't overanalyze. Finished stories teaches you more about finishing stories teaches you more than endlessly polishing the opening paragraph. A great habit is to write to the end and then revise the story. So just get the story down and then revise it. Let's see. A Cozen had a pintura. I said perfectly. I hope. Happy New Year. Brazil. Oh, fantastic. I am talking about your master's thesis, Saga Sam. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. You wish you could write short stories or be a DM for campaigns. There's no reason why you can't. Unless time is an issue. But outside of time, just write. That's really what it comes down to. And then there's so many people online looking for DMs. DMs are the linchpin to any campaign, any game, any one-off. You have to have someone run it. So it really just comes down to running it. And if you mess up and you're terrible, that doesn't matter because you learn from every mistake. You learn more from mistakes in life than successes. So you will learn from just doing it. And again, there's so many people online. Just go to Roll20, for example. Go to the Looking for Dungeon Masters forum page, or go to D&D Beyond forum if you want to do 5th edition or something. Or there's the Piazza, which is another place. I don't know if they have looking for players or anything, but it's just a really great Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy world forum that you can leverage probably. Let's see. If Saga Sam can do it, you can do it. Robin. All right, so the next tip I have is revise with purpose. When revising, ask yourself, does every scene matter? Can I cut anything without harming the story? And is the ending earned? Short stories often improve most by cutting and not adding. Filmmakers go through this all the time. They end up with 3 hours worth of footage, and the studio wants them to bring it down to 90 minutes. So they have to go through and cut scenes. And what it forces you to do is evaluate the actual core of the story. What is the core heart of this story? And every extra scene that you thought would be great maybe not be necessary to that core story. And so you just start shaving stuff off. And that's it. What I would say is keep every version of a story. So don't erase content. Just copy a document and do like V2 or R2 for version 2 or round 2, so that you always have the original, but you're just working on the next version or round of that original. And that way you can always go back and look at content that was lost. One thing that Google Docs does really well, I'm not sure if Microsoft Office does, but I'm sure it must, is have a history of a document. So you can always go back in time and see the earlier version of it. So you don't have to keep making copies, but never delete work. Always keep backups of it. And that lets you start cutting and seeing how it feels, as how it flows as a story with that content being cut. And you might find that you don't need a whole lot extra. You can just tell the core story and it's good enough, you know? And the last tip I have, hey, have a great New Year, Sith. Thanks for tuning in, man. The last tip I have is simple fantasy short story formula is a character wants something, magic complicates it, a character must then make a choice, and the world or the character changes from that choice. That's really it. And it comes down to introduction, conflict, resolution. That's it. And it's all set in a setting you already are aware of, that you're a fan of. And so it should be pretty easy for you to get a genesis of an idea and then just start refining it. Everything else really is flavor. All right, so before I give you just some sample story ideas, I'm going to share with you my idea. Oh, here's someone that just jumped in chat, Horrific Podcast. He's put out a lot of anthologies, and he has written a bunch of short stories. So if you have ever any questions, you can always, I don't know if he hasn't volunteered to answer anything, but he might answer your questions about writing a short story because he's done a bunch of these already. All right, so my log line, my elevator pitch for my short story is: a knight of the divine hammer struggles with leaving his secret wife to chase down the cult of Chemish. So that's the log line. We have a character with a desire, we have a conflict, and then of course the resolution is not going to be named yet. I know what it is, of course, but I can't tell you. He can give all the wrong answers. That's nice. So the era that my story is being taken in is the Age of Might, around 39 Pre-Cataclysm, after the King Priest has already made his declaration of manifest virtue. And so this is a point in the history where evil is being hunted down and murdered simply because they exist. So that's the era. It's a time of incredible conflict, moral and military-based conflict. And it's just a really great era that doesn't have a whole lot of stories set in it. And it's a great way for me to be able to stretch my creative legs on a really existing great backdrop of an era. So this is before the cataclysm is ever even a gleam in Beldinus Pilifiro's mind. But it's after the Divine Hammer was created. And so we're less than 40 years away from the cataclysm. And so this is just a time of complete upheaval and turbulence. So the main characters that I have here, and some of these are going to be backdrop characters only referenced in introduction and stuff like that. But of course, in this era, you have to mention the King Priest, Beldinus Pilifero. He is, of course, the one overarching character that is spinning the trajectory in this entire era. Then, of course, Cathan Marseverin, Cathan Twiceborn. He was the one who received the vision of a burning hammer falling towards Istar, which then was the genesis of the King Priest creating the Divine Hammer order of knights. And then, of course, Tavar of Luciel, who is the first Grand Marshal of the Divine Hammer. And then the main character of my story, his name is Darian Volkar. So he is a former orphan, he has a love interest, and he is a brand new knight of the Divine Hammer. His love interest is named Amara Kesh. She is a secret wife, and she was also an orphan, which was the initial reason why they connected with each other, is a shared experience, which then turned to love. And then his battle buddy, his best friend, and his companion warrior, his name is Cassian Morvek. And he's loyal, he's direct, he's a bit dirty-minded. And this is something else I should talk about. Think of this in terms like I run my game sessions. PG-13. This is not a hard R. This is not an X story, and I don't want to receive any hard R or X stories. I don't want any pornography at all. I open mine with very heavy PG-13 suggestion of activity, but it does not explicitly state anything pornographic at all. So I want to make sure that this is not that type of anthology. So if you already have those types of scenes of explicit gore or explicit sex, just edit them. All right. So then also, I have a character named Tiber Kalos. He is the Icodio, or the Knight Banneret. He's the leader of Darian's Ina, or squadron. And of course, I'm leaning on the vernacular of the era that was originally defined by Chris Pearson's King Priest trilogy, because it's so rich and it actually helps sink you in. But every time I mention one of these words for the first time, I'm just explaining what it means for the audience who may not know. And so I'm trying to do that in a way that's fluid and doesn't feel like I'm teaching, but it has to be done, because otherwise you would have no idea what the hell an Ina is, you know? And then, of course, leading the other side is the Bone Seer Arcaval. He is the High Priest of Chemish. And his general, that is really the antagonist of this entire story, is the Hierophant Caldris Ossian. He's the local cult leader of Chemish that is going to be the real trouble center of this story. Okay, so the reason why I outline all of this stuff is so that I know, one, if I'm like 3/4 the way through the story and I forget a name, I don't have to scan through the story. I can just go to my bullet pointed notes and say, oh, this is the guy, this is his name, this is how you spell the name and stuff like that. And then, of course, you doing this before you start writing the story actually helps your mind start framing the story and developing it. And so once I outline the characters involved, that actually makes me start thinking, okay, well then what are some conflicts that these characters can be involved in? How can I make it interesting and challenging for them to complete their mission? And what would the bad guys be doing? And what makes them bad? And are they really bad? You know, I mean, how does the world see them? So also organizations, because this is a world that we're writing in, there have to be some decent organizations. Hey, Justin, thanks for tuning in. First and foremost, of course, this is set on a Knight of the Divine Hammer, so the Order of the Divine Hammer. And so I researched all the information I could find about the structure of that order of military. And then, of course, the Knights of Solamnia. You cannot exist in this era without dealing with Knights of Solamnia in some way. The King Priest and the Church of Paladine. And then, of course, the Cult of Chemish. These are the main organizations that are going to be at play in my story. Now, I may have to edit some out based on the length that I'm trying to go for, but that's where I'm starting as the genesis of my story. And then the locations that my story is going to be taking place in, because this is not a novel, this is not an epic trilogy or whatever. This is just a short story. I want to keep it contained in one small part of the world. And so this is going to be talking about the Lord City of Istar, but it's going to be taking place in the Midrath Mountains, which is just south of Istar. And the cities, the towns and villages involved is going to be Visul, which is on the southeast side of Midrath Mountains, and Zathras. And Zathras is really the home of Darian and Amara. And so that's the sort of very intimate location that I'm going to be dealing with. Of course, as soon as the the mountain fell on Krynn and the cataclysm struck, these locations were destroyed. So they're only relevant to this period of time, which is also great because I get to make them up and have them be whatever I want. So that helps as well. The mages at Ten Towers were incredibly important. They're just not germane to my story that I'm telling, though they have huge implications in this era, just not to my stories all. The word count to the entries, horrific podcast, is hold on, let me look real quick. 4,000 to 7,500. Generally, if it's over or if it's less, as long as it's really needed, then it's okay. But that's the sweet spot I'm looking for. 4,000 to 7,500. Basically under 8,000 if we can. But again, I'm able to bend if the story dictates. Okay, so we have our characters, we have our organizations, and we have our locations that the story is going to be taking place in. So what's the arc that I'm telling, right? I already gave you the log line, but what's the story arc about? In Act 1, my goal is that we learn about Darian and the Knights of the Divine Hammer, in addition to his secret wife Amara. Darian is searching for the Hierophant Caldrus Ossian, a cult of Chemish cell leader in the town of Visul. So that's the setup. So what's Act 2 going to be about? Well, it's going to be the discovery of Ossian leads to the order to the Midrath Mountains and an ancient temple there. Darian is tormented by his inability to be with his wife, the fact that he's living a lie, because if you're in the Knights of the Divine Hammer, you're not supposed to be married. You're not supposed to be with anyone. Your heart and soul is devoted to the king priest of Istar. You're not allowed. You're supposed to be chaste. And so this is tearing him apart inside because he's living a lie, but he can't deny his genuine love. And the reason why he's signed up to be in the order so that he can live a life afterward with Amara and break the cycle of poverty and being an orphan that he was raised in. So he has motivation, but it's tearing him apart. And the terror that the Order of the Divine Hammer is spreading across the Holy Empire. So we have to remember that, yes, they're going after bad guys right now, but the Order of the Divine Hammer was not good, just like the King Priest was not good. He did really horrible, evil things, even so much as turning his Knights of the Divine Hammer against neutral gods and other good gods and their worshippers. So if it wasn't Paladine, it wasn't good enough. So no one in this world is really good, and Darian is realizing that. And that's a hard thing to rationalize when that's your entire persona, you know? And then in Act 3, the conflict resolution, his squad finds the temple and then has to confront the high priest, the Bone Seer Arcaval, only to discover some really troubling information that I'm not going to cover. So we have our setup, we have our conflict, and we have our resolution in the 3-act structure. That's how I am framing my short story. And I'm already in, and I'm very, very happy with it right now, but I still have a lot to do and refine and stuff like that. And I'm constantly thinking about it as I'm doing other stuff. And so it's just something that's just at the back of my mind that I'm constantly working on, even if I'm not actively typing. So I should have it done here in the next month and ready. But what about you? What are you going to write your story about? And how are you going to structure your story? What era are you going to be writing your story in? What characters and character arcs are you going to be, making up? I mean, we have from the age of Starbirth to the age of Mortals to have a playground in. And you can literally do anything with that. It could be very, very interesting. Okay, so I've got some really brief story synopsis ideas, little log lines that if you want it, take it. If it inspires you into a specific storyline, awesome, take it and go off with it. If it just inspires you for a different idea, well, then that's why I'm telling you this. So the first story beat, log line. A mercenary company discovers their employer is a dragon high lord and must choose between gold or conscience. So they were desperate. They needed to, obviously survive in a war-torn world, and they didn't know that it was a dragon high lord, but the money's right. Do they forsake their conscience to join this military organization that is overtly evil and enslaving and subjugating people? Or do they start as evil and through the course of it realize, I can't do this. This is not what I'm about. So the next logline. An apprentice of the Tower of High Sorcery fails the test, not catastrophically, however, but quietly, and they have to live with what was taken instead. So what if their failure didn't end up in death, and instead they suffered in some way? Is it the stripping away of magic? Is it a physical pain that they have to live with, or missing a limb or something? Or is it something emotional, like they saw themselves kill their own child and now they can't even look their kid in the face because they knew that their love for magic, which is now gone, was what drove them to commit the most heinous of acts. And now they just cannot live with themselves without both. I mean, there's so much wonderful storytelling just wrapped up within the idea of taking a test of high sorcery, let alone the outcome of failure. Oh, could be horrible. Okay, here's another one. A disgraced knight of Salamnia hides his past while protecting a caravan until his order comes calling. So what if this caravan, this disgraced knight, is doing things that he would never consider doing, or helping people who would never consider helping if he was not disgraced, but then has an opportunity finally to get back in order. And now he has to justify the horrible things he's been doing to people who are saying, no, come back to the order. We want you back. And having to sort of come to terms with all of that inner turmoil. Another little genesis of an idea. A plainsfolk storyteller realizes that their oral history will die with them unless they entrust it to an outsider. Now, there's a lot of eras where the plainsmen almost went fully extinct. Or did, in fact. I mean, probably the best example is when the Red Dragon Army swept across the Abanasinian plains and enslaved and wiped out a whole lot of plainsman cultures, because there are multiple tribes. So what if you want your tribe's memories to continue, and it's against your tribal ways to share them with outsiders? But you don't have any choice at this point. So you have to find someone and just share it with them. What would that look like? Another idea. An artifact from before the cataclysm resurfaces, but using it may doom the fragile balance of the new world. What if this artifact that you've come across leads to the, ultimate like war of souls, or leads to the second cataclysm, or leads to the War of the Lance starting? What if this artifact that you just make up out of your own mind, who knows what it is or what it does, is the genesis to something horrible, like a dragon war? How would that happen? What would characters do? Another one, and this is the last one I'm going to share here, is a widow casts her knight husband's armor into a river sacred to Habakkuk, and something answers. Well, what is that something? Is it the ancient Huldra folk coming through from their extra-dimensional world? Did the waters purify the armor, bringing back the knight one last time to tell this woman that he misses her and he loves her and he's waiting at the gate of souls for her? Is it something so small and simple as to be, I made my friend swear that he would come and assist you and provide for you or deliver you money. Did it come? Just a final message, what happens? Just nice little story beat ideas. And you can just take them and run with them. All right. So are you trying to publish an anthology of short stories for Dragonlance? You missed the very start. It can't be Dragonlance because Dragonlance, the word Dragonlance is copyrighted. So it's DLSaga. The world, the campaign setting is not copyrighted, just the name Dragonlance is. So we can use the world, we can play in the world, and it has to be an original short story by you, but it can't use the word Dragonlance in it. That's the stipulation. Let's see. Your story isn't in Krynn, a knight that fled a duel and is forced to defend a family he takes refuge with. That's interesting. That's fine too, because it's reasonable enough that it's high fantasy and it could be set anywhere. So I think that would be a fantastic one, Sake-san. The measure and the oath are really good storytelling devices, 100%. You have an idea, a story of a smuggler and pirates trying to do the right thing on a deal gone wrong. Ooh, Corey, that's a good idea too. I like that. And look, if you don't want to be burdened by the campaign setting, just think of an interesting story hook and just tell a short story that could be reasonably placed in any fantasy world. And that's good enough. You know, it doesn't have to be on the nose where it's located. Like I started the stream saying, one of my favorite Margaret Weiss short stories could be set in any fantasy world. It's not on the nose as Dragonlance at all. So that's fine too. Happy New Year, Justin. Thanks for tuning in. All right, and that's really all I had for this hangout. Thank you guys so much for sharing your thoughts and ideas and experiences and stuff with me. I really appreciate it. Let's see. I think it was March 1st. Yeah, March 1st is the deadline, 2026, March 1st. So that gives you January, February. That's 2 full months to write your short story that's between 4,000 to 7,500 words. That should be very doable. Again, if I don't have enough short stories and you've already submitted yours by the deadline, I'll just let you know and I'll send it back to you and say, I'm sorry. If you want to put it in a shelf for another few months, maybe we can get enough short stories in, but if I don't have enough, I can't do it. That's really what it comes down to. So it really comes down to numbers. That's it. So thank you guys so very much for tuning in to this Dragonlance Hangout. I really do appreciate your time and attention. What do you think of the DLSaga Anthology? Will you be contributing a story? And finally, what is your favorite anthology? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. Thank you to creator patron Aaron Hardy, producer patron Azrael, and developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join in that celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar.